Hey everybody, welcome back. On this episode, we're going to place the Happijac motor heads and the remote control module. Stay tuned. Before we were going to take them off, we did want to go ahead and make sure that we got our truck camper stable on some platforms. You could either put it on the back of a truck or on some platforms, but in our case, we needed it on some platforms somewhere that we could let it sit for a few weeks while we send the motor heads off to get refurbished. So on our truck camper, we have the Happijac 4500 in the front and the 4150s in the back. I don't know if there's any difference in the motor head or not. When I spoke with Happijac, they didn't really say. But basically, it's very simple to pull them apart. There's just a 3/8 bolt on both sides of it, and we'll just go ahead and loosen that up, and then we'll remove the head. Before we remove the motor head on it, we do need to take this little piece off here. There's 4 screws, and then there's a disconnect, which is the power wire for the motor. Don't mind our rusty brackets there. We do need to sand those down and paint them while we're doing all this, so we'll get those cleaned up and painted up as well. So basically, once you take the 4 screws out here, this cap will just come off, and then there's just a plug wire here, and you just disconnect it. It's just one of those types of plugs. So once you get that disconnected, I'm gonna just pull it back up through this little loop. So now our power wire is disconnected, and all we have to do is take the 2 bolts off and remove the motor head. So before we take the 2 bolts off, we do have a little bit of pressure using the jacks already, so we're just going to leave that there. Some of the weight is on the frame, and then some of it is on the legs, but we're going to leave the lever in the up position and the lock position. So we're going to leave that there while we unbolt the head. There's just 2 small bolts like that. And then if it's a little bit stuck, you can just take it and pop it up. And it comes up, and there is a little spring right here. So you can see that spring. I'm just going to leave that there. And here's the bottom of it. So I'm just going to take this, set this aside. I'm personally going to leave the spring here, and then I'm just going to take some tape and I'm going to tape it off to make sure that I don't lose it. It stays in place, and we can reuse it when we get the new motors back. I'm actually going to tape over the little lever to make sure that we don't bump it and unlock it.
Stays in the up position.
So that's it for removing the motor heads. I'm going to go ahead and do the other 3 and have all 4 of them done. We're going to send them off, and when they come back, we'll put them back on. See you then. Before I put the new Happijac motor heads on there, I figured I'd take the opportunity and go ahead and basically just sand down the brackets and give them a coat of paint just to clean them up. And I've kind of done that all the way around on all 4 corners. Some were worse than others. For some reason, the left side seemed to be the worst on front and rear. But this is the front right here, and just kind of got it cleaned up and painted up. So the brackets gonna look good. Here's the front left. Bracket looks really good. Had to pull the wires off and basically just covered up that little metal tab, and then put a new bolt to hold the wires on, and everything should work well. Okay, so we're back with the Happijac project. It's been about 2 weeks. It's actually been about 3 weeks. We got the Happijac motors back almost a week ago, but this is the first time I've been able to get around to working on them, putting them back on. So I just want to show you how they came back to us. We've already put 2 of them on so far, but basically they came back in 3 boxes. This is the other 2 motors that we got. So they did box them up nicely and package them so they're all set and wire ties are cleaned up. I mean, they still look like they're you know, the original as far as the housing and that sort of thing, but hopefully the inside and everything's good to go. So got a couple of those there. They do come with the extra hardware, the spring, the little coupler, and new screws and a washer and that sort of thing, with instructions on how to put it on. And then we also got the refurbished control module that comes with the remote control. So our old control module had a cabled remote control that was, you know, 15 years old. So this one's a wireless. So I will just be removing the one in the camper, the old one, and just going to basically, it's almost plug and play because it's just the same fittings on there. So I'm just going to disconnect the old one, plug in the new one, and go ahead and finish up putting on the other 2 motors, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull off the tape that I had on here, basically just covering it up from the weather, keep the rain from getting in there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out the old spring and the old little coupler that goes in there. So we're going to use new ones on that. I'm going to set that down. But before I do that, as you can see down in here, there's a gear. And that gear is actually where you can either use the hand crank or with the motor is what turns. So they've been pretty dry. Got a little bit of grease in there, but I'm going to put some extra grease on them just because I can, and I got it open. I'm going to basically just squirting some on that big gear in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it just enough that I can get to the other side of that gear to put some more grease on that side. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the new bag of all the hardware so we can use some of that. And I'm going to get the new spring out, the little coupler, and this little washer. I'm going to set those down here for a moment. I'm going to put some grease in the end of this as well. Not a lot, it doesn't really take much, just enough to get some in there. And then I'm going to take this washer, and according to the instructions it shows to put it down around that shaft in there. And I'm just going to take it and I'm going to push it down with the spring. And then take the spring and the new shaft and put that spring on that coupler thing there, and it's kind of hard, it's tight. It's a little bit of a challenge to get it on there, but it will go. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a little bit of grease in here. Got a little grease in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to slide it down over the fitting that's inside here. Just another square fitting that slides right down there on top of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this just a little bit to align this coupler up so that it's square, because I need to be able to align this square fitting, that shaft there, into this coupler. Now that I have the new spring and the new coupler in there and I got it aligned, basically with the shaft here, I'm just going to go ahead, I'm just going to slide it back on here on top, just kind of work it, press it down, put it right in place. Then I got the two new bolts. Comes with two new bolts and washers here with a little rubber backside on the washer. Basically just thread that on and screw them on. It is a 3/8 screw. I'll try to quickly get these on here. Okay, so now that we got it started, I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. Just snug it down. Doesn't need to be crazy tight. I can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side. I did keep the old screws that came with them from before, but since it came with new ones, I'll go ahead and use those. So now that we've got the motor on, we need to go ahead and take this cover off here, take these 4 screws out. As you can see, I went ahead and I painted the whole bracket from mostly the whole top half, and scraped this down and sanded that and painted that. So we'll go ahead and take this cover off, and then we will plug in the power wire to the motor, put the cover back on, and we should be all set as far as this one goes, and then we'll move on to our last one. We have one more after this. So we'll go ahead and plug in the new wire to the old one, put it back up in the little box there, and put the cover back on. And then I will secure the wire a little later. Get that good and flat. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and install the new control module. I've already removed the cover off the old one. It just clipped it in there on top of that, so take the cover off, and then there's some screws holding it up there, and basically just unplug the wires from the old one and plug it into the new one, and I believe that's all it's needed. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a try and hope it works. What I did is, before I pulled it all apart, I went ahead and labeled all the wires: left rear, left front, right rear, right front, just to make sure that I don't get them mixed up as I pull them off. And then also have the power wire and the ground wire over there. So, but before I do that, just to show you, I did disconnect the camper, so it has no power and there is no battery in it. So I should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on pulling that apart. There it is. I got it all plugged up. Right now, I still need to mount it to the wall there, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a try and see how it works. Got to plug the camper back in and see if that works. And I guess it works off shore power. Otherwise, I'll have to put the battery back in. But let's go ahead and take a look and see if it works. Before I try it out, I've already walked around and made sure all the levers for all the jack motors are in the up position, because that's where it needs to be in order to control it with the motors. From my understanding, it's the first time I've used them here, so we're gonna give it a try. Doesn't seem to be working on the shore power. I guess I gotta put the battery in. I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've hooked up the battery and I unplugged the camper from shore power. So we're going to give it a try. So I read in the instructions we had to hold down the up and the down buttons at the same time to turn the remote on, and the extra ACC buttons on here as well. So it looks like it turns a little green light on there. And I think it's going to work. Let's try it. It's working. Go check the other side. All 4 jacks are working. It's working great. I'm super excited about that. It's going to be so much easier than hand cranking this camper up and down, because that's a job and it's kind of scary too, doing one at a time. So been able to keep, you know, the 2 front or 2 rear or all 4 at the same time up and down. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited about that. So hope this video helped some of you. I'm not a professional with this. I'm just trying it out. So it's not really a how-to on hooking it all up, but it's a how I did it video, and looks like it worked. So it's pretty cool. I'm excited. So hopefully it'll help some of you. And if you like the video, please subscribe, hit the like button, and make some comments and all that good stuff. We'd appreciate it. So until next time, we'll see you on Runaway Roses. Bye-bye.